So welcome everybody. We will move very swiftly on to our panel discussion today, which is going to be a great one. We always begin our sessions run for the Prime UK and Ireland Chapter Careers and Sustainability Group with a brief introduction to the context of Prime, because for those people who are new to this community, just to put you into the picture of the context in which this is all based. So Prime, PRME, the Principles for Responsible Management Education, is a United Nations supported initiative that's all about transforming management education. And that will be the core focus in discussing systems thinking today as a transformational tool for education. There are principles that guide this global network, and they cover every aspect of ethics, responsibility, sustainability. And within the Prime network, this is focused very much around teaching, research, business engagement, and that reflects the community that we have in the room today with practitioners across education and the business space. It's a global network. We are one of the 17 chapters. We are the UK and Ireland chapter. And so within this, within different working groups, the Careers and Sustainability Working Group that we're representing here in this meeting, it's all about generating discussion, dialogue, research, and engagement, and in partnership between everybody who's here today. We hope that this is the springboard for further connections. So we began this working group a few years ago. Currently, we've got about nearly 200 members, and we run a number of collaborative research projects under that, which was where this focus on systems thinking first began. So we've come together to understand the intersection around careers, employability, sustainability, bringing together academics, practitioners, and indeed careers practitioners to be able to understand what we can do within education to prepare the future workforce and to help early talent. And so we always invite and welcome students into these communities also, and welcome to all those students who are here today. The session began from a previous webinar in which we presented our research findings from sustainability in early careers, in which we discovered from surveys and interviews with employers that systems thinking is a much sought after skill that employers felt graduates could usefully develop more, ready to go into the world of work. And in discussing this, Petra was at that event, and that was the beginning of talking about let's do more work on this together. And just to briefly mention some other current active projects within the working group is very much around green skills for green jobs. So if you have an interest to hear more about that, we'll be able to put the links into the chat, and please do get in touch with us. Again, that's the intersection of education and businesses in understanding what are the skills and competencies that organizations want, and how can we develop those through our educational approaches. And we're working with a range of universities, as you see here, on this project, and always welcome further collaboration. So at this point, shortly, I will hand over to Jonathan to introduce our panel. We will put the links into the chat, they're not already there, on how to stay in touch with us, our mailing list, our LinkedIn group, and please do get in touch if you would like to follow on with any webinars yourself. Jonathan.
So thank you, Karen. And welcome to our panelists, and welcome to all of our audience as well, and hopefully not just audience, but contributors to this conversation. So as Karen has said, this stemmed from our original webinar that we had in October last year when we presented the findings from this particular report. And we decided, on the basis of a comment that Petra made, but also feedback from other people, that this was well worthy of a future and more detailed conversation. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So what the kind of data that we were working from at that point is summarized from that early careers report where 114 of the organizations reflected on that question. How would you rate applicant readiness? That's for placements, internships, and graduate roles to engage in sustainability projects and tasks. And we gave them a list of kind of skills and competencies, which are broadly based on the UNESCO's sustainability competencies list. And it was a mixed picture, and we could take, I think, quite a lot of pride as a sector, as a higher education sector. If you look, for example, at some of the data around collaborative skills, where 39% of respondents felt that all students were graduates extremely ready, moderately ready, etc. And you can read the data for yourself. But there were some areas which we were both surprised and disappointed at to some extent. And one of them was in relation to systems thinking, where you can see it's the lowest score on the extremely ready side and almost the lowest score on the, almost the highest score on the not at all ready side. So this is the data that we're working from. We were interested in. We wanted to explore further. And so at this point, you can stop sharing. Thank you, Karen. And I'm going to move on to a kind of full screen and introduce our panel to you. So what we've done is to put together what I think is a really diverse and I happen to know for sure, interesting panel of people with different perspectives on systems thinking coming from educational backgrounds, consultancy backgrounds, and crucially for all of the work that we do in this working group, also from employer backgrounds, employers in different sectors as well. So what I'm going to do is introduce the panelists to you briefly. I'm also going to encourage you during the discussion that we have to do two things, one of which is to post any questions or observations that you've got into the chat box so that we can pick those up once our first questions around the panel and the panel rounds have been done. And also, if you could share within the chat box any resources that you are using or have found particularly helpful in terms of educating, training, consulting, around systems thinking. They can be of a more academic nature, they can be of a practitioner nature, a pedagogic nature. It's an opportunity to share. And what we will do, we will collect all of those, and in our feedback to you afterwards, when we send you the recording, we will also send you a link to all of those. So feel free to share away. But before we waste too much more time on introductory comments, let me first of all introduce the panel. And my introductions are going to follow in the order of family names. I'm going to start with Manuela, who's on my screen anyway, is top right, Manuela Gonzalez Perez. And Manuela joins us I've just lost my notes for a moment. They've gone in, there you are. Not such good planning. It's going well up until that point. And Manuela is the environmental sustainability lead at the Dawson Group. And her LinkedIn profile, which I find fascinating, describes us as a governance architect driving scope 1 to 3 emission reductions, audit-ready sustainability policies and compliance, and sustainable enterprise creator, and not to mention being passionate about the circular economy solutions. So she's well equipped to be contributing here. The Dawson Group, for those of you who don't know the Dawson Group, is a business-to-business asset hire and funding group of companies supported by KKR, a leading global investment firm, and its assets represent over 30,000 different supply chain links used across every industry. And Manuela's role is to develop and implement sustainability policies and practices on energy efficiency, waste and water reduction, amongst others. Before her role at the Dawson Group, she worked in a compliance and corporate governance role at the construction company, the Waits Group. So Manuela, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
For your contributions. Carrying on in family name order, Petra Moulton Hill is a professor of sustainable management and education for ESD, education for sustainable development at Nottingham Business School, which is part of Nottingham Trent University. Petra is also very kind of embedded in the Prime network, which is under the auspices of which we're meeting today, because she's co-chair of the UN Prime Working Group on climate change. You'd think I'd be able to say that by now after my career. And also author of the Handbook of Carbon Management, a step-by-step guide to high-impact climate solutions for every manager in every function. On top of that, editor of Sustainable Management, a complete guide for faculty and students, which is now running into its 3rd edition. And as already stated, Petra's question in our last seminar has actually the prompt to this event here. So Petra, thank you once again for doing that. Jennifer Parker, who you can also see on your screen, is the research director at the Schumacher Institute, which for those, and most of you may or may not know, well, I should have said initially, by the way, that we're not taking any kind of, we are not making any assumptions about how familiar people are with system terms and systems thinking, which is why you may or may not have heard of the Schumacher Institute. But if you've done any work around systems, you certainly have. It's a network of fellows and associates dedicated to delivering innovative system solutions to the world's most pressing problems through a combination of research, training, events, and consultancy. She's worked with the University of Bristol's Quest Earth System Science Climate Change team as a researcher on the EU-funded Converge project. She's also active within the Wales Systems Forum, the aim of which is to help extend systems understanding and capacity across all sectors of Welsh society. She's also published in a number of different ways and in different types of publication, which I'm not going to go into now in the interest of getting on to the panel. And finally, our last panelist, last but by no means least, James Rosenshine, has worked in a variety of roles and organizations in the energy sector for the last 14 years or so. Currently in a strategic sales role for Schneider Electric in the midstream transmission and distribution industry, where he's focusing on new energies and gas. Now, if you don't know Schneider Electric, it describes itself as a global energy technology leader driving efficiency and sustainability by electrifying, automating, and digitalizing industries, businesses, and homes. Its technologies enable buildings, data centers, factories, infrastructure, and grids to operate as open, interconnected ecosystems, enhancing performance, resilience, and sustainability. In his role immediately prior to this one, James focused on the wastewater sector in the UK in a collaboration between Schneider and their affiliated company Aveva at that time, and he's had many clients within the water industry. James is also an MBA student at Oxford Brookes University, which is his final claim to fame for today. So the last thing to say before we move on to panel questions is I've made it clear to all of our panelists, but also I want to make it clear to our audience that while everybody who's on the panel is drawing on their professional backgrounds, it's also important to say that they're here in their personal capacities and they're not formally representing their employers. So do bear that in mind in the conversation that follows. So moving on to the panel questions, and I've restricted the panel questions to 3 just to get everything moving. So we're going to move around the panel on 3 different issues and then take it and open it to the floor as soon as we can do. And the first question that I'm going to put to the panel is kind of a starting point, really, and it's to recognize that systems thinking can mean different things to different people, depending in part on whether you come from a natural sciences or a social sciences background. So what I'm asking the panel, what for you stand out as essential components in a systems thinking mindset? And I'm going to go to Petra first with this question.
Always someone has to be the first who did forget to put the audio back on, so I was the one now in this session, sorry. Yeah, so when obviously we read the question before, and I thought it's quite a difficult question because there are so many elements. So if I have to choose, I think for me it's very much to look into, to immediately when you make a decision to think about consequences and unintended consequences, because often we don't recognize the unintended consequences, and also to think at the wider, not the immediate effect you have with a decision, but what is coming from it. And I thought I would give you an example, which is in my mind, and also especially after listening, not listening much, but listening to Davos last week, where it wasn't a big issue, and it's a topic around AI. I think you might have heard enough of AI by now, but I thought it's a really good example where a lot of people are very excited about AI and are making lots of changes and so on. But there's kind of a lot of impact which this will have on lots of systems. And one is, for example, that you might have heard in Davos, it was mentioned there, that actually it will be difficult for a lot of our students to have actually entrance job, because a lot of the entrance jobs might go, and you might think, oh, it's their problem. It's not really or the universities have to do something about it. But I think it's not only the problem for the students or for the universities. I think at the end, and this is where the system comes in, all of these students would be consumers, would be maybe wanting to buy their first first house, their first flat, wanted to start life in different ways. And if they are unemployed, if they don't get an entrance, they will maybe have to rely on benefits. Obviously, there might be social unrest coming from this situation if a lot of young people are unemployed and so on. And I think this is where, for me, this kind of, oh yeah, let's use AI and change all the companies that we run more on AIs has a lot of consequences which we might not have in our head when we think about it. Yeah, I think this is my first intro to system thinking.
Thank you. And it can only be a first introduction. I mean, so much has been written, so much has been thought about this, but I take from that kind of consequences intended and unintended. And let's go to Manuela next. Manuela, would you like to join in for your first response to this question?
I mean, I think the problem is, or let's call it like that, some employers, they may think that when a student finish the university or the study that they're doing, they just need to know everything. And I don't think that's actually a good approach. In terms of AI, from my perspective and personal, from a personal perspective for what I'm doing here, I don't think it should replace human capacity, because there's a lot of things instead of sustainability, for example, that a person is able to add value to the business, like even using AI, using as a tool, but not just as a complement, not as a substitute of the person who actually is gonna do the job. So if I had to, for example, this position is quite new, the one I'm doing now. If in my mind, I'm thinking already, in the future, I would need somebody, some support, help, but I wouldn't even think about ask the person for experience or anything like that. I just would give the opportunity, because everybody had to learn from something. And we all, even you go to the best university, you still need an opportunity to develop, deliver. So like that, you're gonna be adding value to the business.
Thank you, Manuela. We'll pick up some of those issues when we look at our next question as well, in terms of what employers are looking for. I'm going to move now to Jeneth. Would you like to come in on the topic of what systems thinking mindset means to you?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I want to link this to sustainability, really, because I think that one of the key things for me is that systems thinking is a response to actual complexity in the world. And you know, the part of the complexity in the world is the different types of system that we have in the world. So sort of biotic, you know, human productive systems which deal with masses of materials, and you've got this whole social systems. But what often gets forgotten, and which we need to very much remember, and is very active in politics currently, is working at the cultural and psychological level. And, you know, we have to work across all these different types of systems in the world in order to make progress on sustainability. I guess a key aspect of that is the dynamics. So part of the complexity is that, you know, we're dealing with like these 4 different types of system, and they're all in progress across time. And some of them work slower, some of them work faster, they contain feedbacks and so on. So it's a bit like systems thinking can help you not be afraid of the real complexity in the world. And the third point, I guess, is the big picture aspect that which might come back to in terms of, you know, like competencies and things that people need to be able to do, is to place what you're doing within a wider landscape in some way, so that you can show you've got at least some idea of how it's contributing and being impacted by that wider landscape. Thanks.
Does that link possibly to the prevalence within systems thinking of the idea of mapping systems?
Yeah, definitely. We'll come on to that. Yes, indeed.
I'm jumping the gun there, Emma.
Well,
okay.
Don't worry.
That's, I mean, this conversation is going to move backwards and forwards inevitably. And James, your opening gambit there.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, systems thinking for me is highly relevant given the role that I have and the company I work for. And so Schneider Electric have been consistently recognized as the most sustainable company in the world. And the reason why that is because sustainability is part of the company's DNA. Employees are measured, executives are measured on sustainability goals. It's the fabric of our supply chain management. So we see it as a whole integrated system approach to what we do, from our purpose down into our business goals and into our operations. So I can talk a lot about that, but look back at what systems thinking has been for me over the years, and look at roles I've done around, for example, product lifecycle management, which if you think about a product lifecycle going from concept to design to engineering, construction into operations, it's very much a linear process. But actually, what we look to do in what we call PLM, product lifecycle management, is actually to iterate, to optimize at the front end early stage. And the way to do that is having that systems approach to looking at how operations can be better performed if we were to look at different ways of designing a product. And again, that is something which resonates quite well with me. So throughout my career, systems thinking has been applied consistently right back to when I did my degree many years ago, and looked at lean management. Lean management is all about feedback loops and iterative processes, and looking at not just the end product but the actual process and breaking down that process. So systems thinking means so many different things to me throughout my career. But I think what I'm really surprised about is the results of this study, and that many people think they're not ready for systems thinking, and maybe think it's too complicated, because naturally systems thinking applies to complex elements and interactions. But I think all of us have grown up since our early age with systems thinking. I asked my children about what they think about systems thinking, and they had this view that it's quite a complicated subject, but it's not, because then I pulled up on my daughter who was planning her party, and I mentioned, well, the way that she was planning her party was, well, if I invite that person to the party, but they get on with this other person, but that other person doesn't get on with this, and then she's already thinking about the interaction between different groups and relationships. And I said, well, that's systems thinking. So, people should recognize that systems thinking is something that is ingrained in everyone's day-to-day life since they're young. So hopefully people can sort of recognize that as being something that everyone should be able to adapt and learn about.
Thank you, James. I mean, that's a really interesting perspective. And the thought that it prompts in me is people may be aware in the abstract of systems thinking and systems mindsets, but if you look across so much business decision making and political decision making, it may be intentional or it may be unintentional, but the systems implications of particular actions and policy decisions seem to me so often ignored. And back to the topic of AI, that would appear to be not just the employment ones, but the energy ones, the water ones. All of those things are not being followed through in an integrated fashion. But anyway, I'm not supposed to be talking too much. I'm supposed to be facilitating this conversation. So that was an opening round of thoughts around systems thinking. Sure, we're going to come back to this because we're going to circle through them through our different questions. And thank you for the comments which are coming up through. I just picked up one there. Systems thinking reminds us that skills don't live in isolation. They show up inside messy, interconnected contexts. Indeed, they do. That interconnection, it's, in my experience anyway, is pretty central to systems thinking. So I'm going to go with the second round of questions at this stage, and I'll actually start with James again at this one, because at the center of our discussion today is a concern with what employers, and we're doing this from an educator's point of view, but also from a student point of view. So a concern with what employers in all sectors expect of our placement students and our graduates in terms of systems thinking capabilities. So I'm going to ask our panel to be as practical as possible, giving practical examples to reflect on that question and explain what tasks they would expect our graduates to be capable of if they were systems competent. James.
Okay, so I think a good way to show one's appetite and understanding of systems thinking is through their questioning. So when people are with an employer or potential employer, they ask lots of good questions and show that curiosity, because curiosity stimulates questions and gets people to understand, well, what is the impact of what you've just said? How does that link to something else? That ability to question, and the ability to question to get more detail, or the ability to chunk up and get an oversight, an overview, a helicopter's view of what someone said, is, I think, a really good skill that you can demonstrate just through in your interaction with an employer, potential employer, chunking up and down with your questioning. And I think if I'm really passionate about emotional intelligence. I find it really fascinating how the brain works, and I think if I know for Schneider Electric, they don't just look at people based on their experience or expertise. They look at people based on how they deal with problems, how they deal with their emotions. That's quite an important aspect of a potential employee. And I think, again, practically, I would think about how you come across, how you present yourself, how you look at things from different perspectives. And that is a good skill to have. And so I think, yeah, that's something bearing in mind.
Thanks, James. So you really come back with some very grounded, very, very practical kind of links also to a lot of the work that we do in kind of universities around employability and careers in terms of building skill sets that are recognizable, even within current curricula. James, thank you. So Manuela, on that topic of what employers are looking for in terms of practical systems thinking capabilities, would you like to build on your last answer?
I think it could be initiative that the person has and offer practical solution. For example, you join the company, you have your induction, and even though you don't have that product experience within the role, but you need to be able to connect the dots. Like, for example, you're developing a sustainability strategy, so you need to assess what is the risk of that, and then also bear in mind that that policy can lead to another thing. So you need to be able to think about different things at the same time, and you need to come also with solutions, because with an employer, they don't have the time to sit down with you. It's the time to show you how to do things. You need to be able to be proactive and have the mindset to change, to do things in a different way that you didn't do it before, and also able to work in as a team, collaboration. This is one of the things I encounter here at my position. When I joined the company, the person who employed me to be my manager didn't know anything about sustainability. So I found myself the first day sitting, trying to find policy. Do you have this? Do you have that? No, I don't have it. So one policy, I started with one policy. Then this one leads me to another one, and every day is something new. So I need to think, what is it that they expect from me? So I deliver. So in that sense, I I just need to use all the resources, Internet of Things, people around me in order to deliver what is expected from the position. It's not easy, but it's just you need to think about what is it. Not just forget about the job description. You have to do those, but the job description is not going to tell you exactly how you have to deliver. So you need to find out how you're going to do it. And one way for you to find out how you're going to do it is analyzing the company, ask for know the different business unit, the different team within the business, so you know what is it that they're doing, just as a summary, and then build your knowledge around us in order for you to deliver.
Thanks, Manuela. I mean, there's so many things I could take from that, but that sort of solutions orientation seems to be a kind of one of the key messages that I take out of there. Let's say, Jennifer, let's go to you next.
Thanks. So I'm partly talking here from a sort of third sector perspective. So the vast groups of people who are employed in the third sector or looking for a job in the third sector, and often they're very values-driven people. And you know, that's incredibly important to be able to work with value goals, but you also need some equipment and tools to be able to think strategically. You may be working with a smaller, I mean, some NGOs are obviously extremely large and quite corporate even. But I'm also thinking about those sort of layers that interact with that sort of local government policy, and political parties also, for example, employ a lot of researchers, caseworkers, and so on. And in all these kinds of areas, I think being able to think strategically can be really, really assisted by being able to do systems mapping. And if you can do systems mapping in a participatory way, in a way that involves co-creation with other people, you will get a much better idea of, as we were talking about, unintended consequences. If you've got a wider selection of people in the room, then you're going to be able to collectively see where they're each situated in the system and begin to understand each other's perspectives as well. And this can be a conflict mediation device as well. So yeah, I think in order to make what you might say, you've got a very complex system. In order to make systemic interventions that you think are going to change it for the better, you probably need to get a really good idea of how it is at the moment. And if you can do that with a wide range of people who are affected, then you're going to get a much better answer. And this can actually also prevent governments from making incredible policy mistakes, which they then have to quickly walk back because they haven't thought about how their policies are going to be received by a particular group or set of interests. Mm-hmm. I mean, this also relates, very strongly to the big range of organisations that are trying to look after their local environment and all the different stakeholders that are involved. For example, work we did recently on water. I mean, the number of different types of stakeholders that are interested, say, in a particular catchment area or river is huge. And having the skills to work with those people in a co-creation way is really, I think, very important. And just as a final note, which is extremely practical, writing bids. Funders now want some level of systemic understanding very often in bids, and that can give you the edge, obviously, but it also shows that you've really got your head around what you're trying to do, So yeah, I do think systems dynamics mapping and participatory mapping are really key skills. Thank you.
So mapping keeps coming up, and in fact, in our final question and our final round in a moment, which is kind of, well, how do we do this? We'll perhaps return to that. Petra, I'm going to invite you to comment on the employer perspective, but perhaps as briefly as you can, because I'm very aware of time and we need to get into our kind of dialogue with our audience in a moment.
Yeah, okay. I think for me it is, as the people who know me will know that my passion is really climate solutions and that I like to work with En-ROADS, which is obviously based on systems thinking and which is kind of showing all these climate solutions which we have available. And when I work with companies, what I realize there and what I also get as feedback from them is often that they don't see themselves, as they haven't seen them before in this big picture, worldwide picture, kind of, and how they are contributing worldwide with their small area, kind of. And also what I think is really what I get often as feedback, because I often let people work across different function and like whether it's finance and human resources, for example, and that often they like this, that actually all these different perspectives are coming together, which I think is also kind of for me something which is really important for understanding systems, that you know how everything links together, and then you have the small systems, the big systems, and so on. Yeah, I think you didn't allow me to talk long, Jonathan, so I tried to make it very fast now. But I hope I got the message across that I think it's really that a lot of people in business, but also outside business, in governments, have this very myopic view, always one thing, one consequence, and so on. I think to open this up, to bring different groups together, even beyond companies, maybe by bringing, as Janice already was saying, bringing governments in and things, I think is really, really important.
Thank you. And that was part of the purpose of putting together this panel with different sectoral experiences and hopefully get some kind of reflections across those. Petra, you will have an opportunity to come back in a moment. This is my last question that I'm going to ask everybody to comment on relatively briefly so that we can then bring the audience in. So bearing in mind those kind of employer requirements from a range of which, and we've had lots of practical examples about what those requirements might be. The big question for all the educators in the room is, well, what works in building these capabilities? Is experiential learning central to this? How important is a grounding in key systems terminology? Perhaps back to mapping on their one. There are many resources and toolkits out there, but it's clear from our early careers survey that there is room for improvement in this area. So my final question to the panel as a whole is, what have you seen that works? Jenith, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thanks. I'm just going to echo one of James' points, actually, which is that, and slightly sort of develop it, that basically you don't start with a deficit model because everybody does systems all the time, and we wouldn't be able to navigate this incredibly complex world if we weren't navigating all these different types of systems in our lives. So I think that it's really important to start with that kind of understanding. It's classic, actually, adult and community education practice to start out from getting people to pull out what they already know is I think, a great place to work. But also the experiential aspect. I think nothing really beats trying to work together with a group of people on a problem that really matters to you all. And, I think working on, important examples that are actually real in your community or even more widely, is a key aspect of learning. I do believe, learning comes when you are motivated, and that's a key aspect. So thanks.
And perhaps people who are here in the audience could get ready with their kind of examples a little bit later of how they've worked with that experiential kind of hands-on issues which are real to groups of students, or perhaps to a wider context in which those students live or work. That would be really interesting to hear about. So let's go to Manuela next. Your comments on, well, what works in helping to educate our students and graduates in this direction?
I would think experience through learning, because you can provide all the tools available, but they need practice. So experience through learning, I think, is a good approach to develop human capital within a company, and
Okay.
support any training, anything. But learning, what you do in things, that's one of the main things, I think so.
And I guess the challenge for us is how we create those experiential learning environments,
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say and quite actually difficult to deliver. James, I will bring you in at this point.
Yeah, I think again, it's I like to focus on the on the personal traits that an educator could focus on, and personal skills and behaviors. So it's encouraging in team building and working in teams to help students not try to always perfect things, but to be able to test, fail quickly, have that agile approach to tackling subjects and problems together. And definitely, I think again, looking at my children, they tend to get overwhelmed with trying to perfect things. Try to instead just break things down and to, as I say, look at things in different perspectives and to not worry about getting the perfect answer straight away. And that, I think, that mindset, that's a very good skill to have, and would encourage educators to make sure that that's adopted in everything that students do, so it becomes natural, and people work in that systems thinking way throughout their career and education.
Thanks, James. And Petra, we've circled back to you.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'll try not to cut you short this time.
Okay. No, I think for me it's not as we have obviously we had this quite as a focus in my previous as not job, because I'm still at the same university, but I was leading the Green Academy at Nottingham Trent University, and my task was to integrate sustainability across all the curricula with my team. And one of what we were very early in 2016, we actually decided that the course outcome for every course at NTU has to be systems thinking. So systems thinking was integrated in all the different courses. And one way how we were doing it was actually to let different faculties work together. And I think this comes back to the experiential learning you have already mentioned as well, was to set a challenge, as especially we like to have, and we still like to have, challenges from charities, for example. They put a challenge, say we want to solve this and this and one, and then we try to bring students from different disciplines together to work together to develop a solution. Because I think this is a really good way of understanding the systems which would help them to get a good solution, and for the students to learn the language, how to talk between social science and natural science and so on, to cross these different disciplines as well, and to actually be for them to be able then when they go out, hopefully, to do the same, to work with different people from different areas and understanding systems quite well. So this was an approach. I think you can't, because we have only a short answer. If you want to have a bit of a look, I did put already something here in the chat about the book we have written, but we are about to write another book on systems thinking, and I would love to hear your best examples from all educators in the room, because we want to get the very best into the book. So please do send them to me. Thank you.
Well, that's definitely a plug, both for the book and for contributors. Are you looking for chapter writers, or has that all been commissioned already?
No, this it is edited by only 2 people, written also by 2 people. But what we want to do is kind of one-pagers on the pages with really nice examples, and then obviously the contact details of the educator, so that people then can find out more about the example. So it's kind of giving lots of really nice examples where someone has done it beyond us, because we thought we are not enough if we just give our experience.
Thanks for the invitation. We'll make sure we include that in the follow-up notes, records of this session as well. So a little bit delay, but we do have 15 minutes still to open the conversation to the floor. Bearing in mind those 3 sets of questions, what does it mean to you? What are employers looking for, and how might we best educate that in that area? And just a comment from me along the lines is one of the challenges that I've had trying to teach systems thinking is there is a kind of terminology boundary that you have to cross over to be able to use a lot of the tools. And it can be quite challenging to get there with a group of undergraduates. I think you can, but you need time, and you need to build on knowledge, consecutively over weeks rather than try and do it all in 1 week. So I haven't picked up lots of direct questions so far in the chat box, but I have picked up a contribution from Niaz, around attitude-first learning, which is actually something I wasn't familiar with and haven't come across before. And I wondered whether Niaz wanted to just talk to that for a moment, just to bring that to make that real. Are you still in the room? I can't actually see you on my screen.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, due to connectivity reasons, my camera is off.
That's okay.
The AFL model is a new model I developed, and it starts with attitude. Like if we cultivate a positive attitude with curiosity and openness, I think that leads to further learning, knowledge, and skills. And I would like to apply it to systems thinking. And I think a curiosity and openness towards systems theory could open up new doors for us. And I think we would be able to benefit from that mindset.
Great, thanks for that additional explanation. What I'd like to also bring in is Ian Black now, who's made an interesting comment some of you may have seen, focusing on the paradigm level, building off Meadows. Hasn't been mentioned today, but obviously a key initial thinker in this area, or founding thinker. And you say you try and bring in humor, documentaries, and tasks, which is seemingly impossible questions, to try and shift thinking paradigms. Ian, do you want to give us some practical examples of how you do that?
I'm also having connection issues, so I'll stay off camera. So I've used documentary questions such as, so this is the paradigm level, questions such as getting students, non-mathematical students, to understand that there are different types of infinity, for example. Now that really challenges some of our non-mathematical people. There might be an engineer in the room who gets it and they can explain it, but they're taking a concept that they know is true, that infinity is one thing, and then able to challenge it from there. I've asked questions about to highlight the importance of paradigm and systems goals, to say that you have to design an active transport network to 99.5% of the Scottish population, because I'm based at the University of Strathclyde, within 1 month. And I asked them to go and then come up with it. And it's interesting, I've done that with a group of school kids under children about the age of 11 and 12, and they were much quicker at the answer. The school kids come up with the correct answer as well. We already have one of those. It's called a roads network, and if we just redesigned it, redefined it as an active transport network, then it goes to 99.95%. With those who are stuck in their paradigm, think, well, can we build this? What do we do? So it's spending time at that level, and then things cascade on from there. That there are different ways of thinking. So those are the things I use it, and these are with honours years marketing students who have had a very narrow view of how markets work and our role within it. And there's a gap between the top and the bottom, but we do get some interesting discussions going. So hopefully that's helpful.
It is indeed. And if anybody wants to kind of respond to that or anything that Niaz said, do so. Draw my attention to you, and you can drop into the conversation. I'm just running through some of the comments, and Zoya, I noticed, was strongly kind of reinforcing the value of experiential learning for young professionals. The question being how to incorporate it into the curriculum. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the examples that you've given there about how you've been trying to do that?
Thank you so much. And actually, Patrick can also talk about this, because she was one of the clients. So what we do, our solution was born out of frustration. Companies are frustrated that students they hire have a huge gap between the expected skills and what they think they know. Universities are frustrated because they feel companies don't provide them with enough feedback on what skills they want institutions to focus on. And students, in particular international students, are struggling to secure the first careers, the first jobs when they leave the institutions. So we've developed a program where we have on the one hand a pot of talent. So students from starting from Auckland University in the morning and finishing my day with Arizona State University in the evening, they all sign up to this consortia, And then we match them with real life project. Like if James, for example, has a task that, oh, if I had 1 more hour per week, I would love to have benchmarking analysis of SDG policies of Schneider with some other companies. And then we match students with projects, real life SDG driven projects based on students' skills. We don't care about their degree, we care about skills and interests. So mindset, again, behavioral changes. And within a span of 8 weeks, students in the mixed intercultural, interdisciplinary teams work on these solutions as a part of their curriculum, guided by a faculty member from one of the participating universities. And we've seen fantastic results. We're only at around 20% of internships and jobs offerings at the moment. I want to raise this to 30% by the end of 2026, because for me, the best outcome is when a student from, let's say, corporate law comes in a couple of weeks after graduation, says, listen, I decided to change. I want to do law in sustainable or reporting or CSR. So this mindset where we show them that in order to create impact, you have to have a view of systems thinking and SDG as the 360 degrees. You don't have to be Greta. You can do this in any sector with any degree. So that's our objective.
And you're a great advocate for it, very effectively so. Maybe takeaway line for everybody today: you don't have to be Greta to be, effective at systems.
Great impact, yeah. Thank you.
Great impact. I'm looking at we've still got a good few minutes left. Karen Lombard, I've noticed. UBC, I presume, is University of British Columbia. Do you want to join the conversation and just talk a little bit more about the examples of things you've been doing with SMEs around your climate clinic?
Yes, I can certainly do that. Thank you very much. And yes, I am at UBC in Vancouver. So early morning here for me.
Great. Thank you.
We put together a course. I'm an accountant, really, so I realized that I don't understand financial and sustainability reports as carbon accounting, 5 or so years ago. So I really took it upon myself to learn carbon accounting and wanting to teach that to students and others. But it's a small piece of the whole system. I see that. And so when we work with our SME Climate Clinic, as we call it, and we hope to scale it to other universities as well, we take a group of students and we're just matching them with companies now. So this semester we have groups of 3 and there's 11 SMEs. On Thursday, Friday, they have an intro call. They learn about the company, they map the value chain. And these are small businesses. It could be a little, ice cream store or simple product manufacturer, etc. And students then map the value chain, start calculating scope 1, scope 2, maybe some scope 3 emissions, and make some recommendations on that. And we've now done that for about 5 semesters. This is now, by the end of this semester, we will have worked with 50 SMEs. And it's been great, 150 students. The students love it. They're from different faculties. We streamlining the process now because obviously, for an educator, there's a lot of moving parts if you're working with so many companies and it's different every semester. But we have what we call the SME Climate Clinic formalized, and there's a website that I put there in the chat if people are interested. But I'm also happy to reach out and, talk to anybody about it. We are also going to the International Sustainable Campus Network conference in April, and we'll do a presentation there. And then hopefully one day this is something we can replicate across Canada and broader as well. Any questions? Happy to take that.
Yeah, well, if there are any questions, pop in the chat box while I kind of move on. I just wondered also, because we've got a lot of careers professionals in our network, our Prime network, were there any people wanting to talk, to comment from a careers service point of view on what they see working in terms of students presenting themselves to sustainability related roles from a systems thinking perspective, or initiatives they've been aware of where there's been active work within their universities which have been supporting the development of those skills. So if there are any careers people here, do jump in. I'm not sure. I've been moving up and down the list of comments and contributions that have come in the chat box, but I can't be absolutely sure that I haven't missed one or missed somebody who wants to jump in. If there is anybody, please say so. It looks like we may be reaching the end of the questions and contributions for now. I'm going to invite our panel then in. I didn't brief you on this, but I think I'm going to do it because we've got 4 minutes left. I'm going to invite you to make a closing kind of contribution as to what's the contribution going to be? What you've learned from today that you think is helpful, that might be helpful to others, to try and draw those threads together in that way. James, can I start with you?
The more that people have spoke on this webinar today, and the more that I've spoken, listened to my own voice, has made me realise that systems thinking is something which should be ingrained in every subject. Accountancy, well, surely there's systems thinking that applies to accounting as it applies to sustainability, as it applies to engineering. So within education, system thinking is ought to be a skill that is developed throughout education and into jobs.
Thanks, James. And I think there's plenty of people in the room who'd agree with you and are trying to do that, and are just trying to work out how to do that as effectively as possible. And that was part of the purpose of the session. So thanks for reinforcing that. Manuela, do you want to jump in? One key thing that you've learned that you think might be helpful for others to take away?
Briefly, I think system thinking is about learning, constant learning, and taking opportunity that is given to you, and then just go think outside the box. Don't stay quiet. Go try to read as much as you can. Visit a website, InteroSustainability. Go to talk to regulator. If you need to send directly email, send in, because that's what I think, what I've taken from today. System thinking is about being proactive.
Being proactive, and the word that came to mind while you were talking was kind of unrelenting curiosity as well, in terms of thinking through, all of the connections we've been reinforcing. Jenith, your closing words.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I think that what's come out for me is, or one of the many things, is that we need a different attitude to expertise. That we have quite a sort of, we still have, very often a kind of closed notion of expertise, as it's about being able to be absolutely certain about quite a small area of life. And of course, systems thinking is all about being relatively more informed about complex things, but not certain about anything. And I think, that's a very different kind of skill set and image to sell yourself as a professional on. And maybe we could have a slightly sort of different model of what a systems informed professional looks like in our heads, and tell people it's okay not to, you can open your mouth if you still don't know the complete answer, because folks, nobody does. And we are faced with an incredibly, complex and difficult world, and we're all trying to make sense of it, and we can network together and help each other. But we need the skills to do that. Thanks.
And maybe one of the chapters in Petra's book could be, what is the profile of a systems competent person? Maybe that's the chapter.
Thank you.
And Petra, the last word goes to you.
Yeah, I think I was very intrigued by the attitude first learning model, which Nias, I hope I pronounce your name right, Nias, introduced. And I had really not to attempt, as I was tempted to wander off and leave you all and investigate this more. So this is what I'm taking away, because I hadn't heard about this. So thanks very much for mentioning this. And I hope you all took something away which you want to investigate now and learn more about.
All it remains for me to do is to thank the panel for their various and really thoughtful contributions. The conversation is obviously incomplete because it can't, by definition, I think, be complete in something which is, by definition, fast-moving, interrelated, interconnected, and needs to be responsive to a changing world. But what I would say is that if anybody who's in the room today and who's joined this session would like us to pursue this topic in some shape or form through the Prime Working Group on Careers and Sustainability, we would be very interested to doing that. Not to rerun today's session, but to think about how we could advance thinking and our work in this area, because we see this as one but very important component in what we're doing in terms of employability, in terms of sustainable careers. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the panel. And we're going to end the meeting. I'll stop the recording at this point. But if anybody wants to stay behind for a further conversation for a few minutes, you're very welcome to do that. But I'm sure most of you will need to go because it is 5 o'clock and it's probably
Thank you very much.
nearing the end of your working day.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.